Begin with Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, the number 3 Senate Republican leader. Senator, always good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us today. I think there's no better barometer to go different places in the country. Those voices were from Delaware, as I mentioned. But you can tell it's pretty clear what's on people's minds.
Same exact thing in Wyoming, Martha. I saw it this past weekend. People woke up today with a double punch to the gut. One is the highest gas prices of all times, and the other is inflation numbers even worse than the government predicted. And people are in pain, and the president has no idea what to do about it. So people in Wyoming this weekend, they're having to change the way that they drive, they eat, that they live. So people are feeling stressed, they're feeling squeezed. And I used the $100 analogy, which is I was at the gas station and the guy filled up. He said he had never before paid $100 to fill his truck. I was at the grocery store. A lady had 2 small bags of groceries. She said, this just doesn't feel like $100 worth of groceries. And $100 is the amount that the economists tell us American families have to pay more each week just to keep up with the quality of living of what they had a year ago. That's $5,200 more this year than last year, Martha.
So obviously it's a scramble ahead of the midterms to try to turn this in a better direction on the president's part as he looks at what is looming in November. The Wall Street Journal today making kind of a humorous analogy, but this is what they said. They said President Costanza, meaning George Costanza from Seinfeld, takes on inflation. They say President Biden on Tuesday tried to get ahead of Wednesday's April inflation report, which we saw this morning, with a speech rehashing his well-worn proposals to reduce prices, boost subsidies, raise taxes, increase regulation. He should take Jerry Seinfeld's advice to George Costanza and do the opposite of every policy instinct. And let's remind people what George and Jerry said to each other. Watch this.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Yes, I will do the opposite.
Senator, what do you say?
Well, that's right. President Biden has mismanaged this economy so badly that people are now trapped in this inflation nightmare in which we're all living. And, remember, for 7 months he said this was transitory. It was going to go away, living in denial of this. Yeah, we ought to do the opposite of what the president has done. We shouldn't shut down oil and gas or the Keystone XL pipeline. We should be producing more American energy, and we have it. He won't let us get it out of the ground. The president wants to raise taxes and spend more government money irresponsibly. Well, we ought to stop the reckless spending, and we ought to be making sure that the Trump tax cuts became permanent. So we ought to be doing the exact opposite. But this is a president who will not take responsibility for his own mistakes. He wants to blame everyone else, but he won't look at the man in the mirror and say, hey, you have a lot of responsibility for the disaster we have right now.
Well, speaking of the man in the mirror, Rick Scott, one of your colleagues on Capitol Hill, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, called out the president. He says families are suffering. The blame game. Biden refuses to take responsibility. It's clear that Biden is the problem. He said he's incoherent and confused and needs to resign. And then a reporter in the White House briefing asked the president directly about that question. And here's what happened.
He said, and I'm just quoting here, that the best thing, most effective thing Joe Biden can do to solve the inflation crisis he created is resign. He's the problem. The senator added later, Joe Biden is unwell, he's unfit for office, he's incoherent, incapacitated, and confused. These are his words. Offering him a chance to respond to them.
I think the man has a problem.
So the president kind of, laughed it off. Uncomfortable moment there, to be sure. Do you agree with Rick Scott on the condition of the president?
Well, I would like to see the president do things that will make the country move ahead in a positive way, and that's focus on jobs, the economy, national security. To me, national security is economic security, energy security, border security. We have a lot of crises in this country right now that have been caused by the actions of this president and this administration. We have chaos at the southern border. You saw today 107,000 Americans died from drug overdoses this past year. We don't have any many solutions from the administration. We have energy at an all-time high cost today, $2 a gallon more than it was the day that Joe Biden came into office.
Let me ask you, Senator, could you kind of
change.
sidestep my question about whether or not you agree with Rick Scott on the president's condition? And you are a doctor, so are you choosing to not weigh in on what he said about that?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to examine the president on that, and I'll let those two do it between themselves.
And do you also distance yourself from Senator Scott's plans to raise taxes on some of the lower income earners in the country?
My position has always been to lower taxes, and as I said earlier in this interview, Martha, what I want to do is make permanent the Trump tax cuts, which have given us the strongest economy in my lifetime.
Senator John Barrasso, Wyoming. Thank you very much, sir. Always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Martha.